I'm Celine Williams, and welcome to the Leading Through Crisis podcast, a conversation series exploring resiliency and leadership in challenging times. So my guest today is Patricia Lohan, who is the creator of Powerhouse and the author of The Happy Home, A Guide to Creating a Happy, Healthy, Wealthy Life. She helps women make their home magnetic to money, luck, and blessings. And I had the pleasure of meeting Patricia a couple years ago at an event, and we've stayed in touch ever since. It's lovely to have you here, Patricia.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
So I always like to start with a big, broad question. There we go. Which is the name of the podcast is Living Through Crisis, Leading Through Crisis, not Living Through Crisis, Leading Through Crisis. And when you hear that, what comes to mind for you? What does that mean to you?
The very first thing that comes to mind, as a feng shui expert, is the symbol for crisis in Chinese translates to opportunity. And I just thought that's exactly what it is, that if we are hitting into something that is really uncomfortable, that actually in the East and with feng shui, we see it as an opportunity. A lot of people come to me when they are in a crisis, when things are not going the way that they want, when they're feeling stuck, when something is happening in their marriage, in their bank account, or their finances. And when we realize that they've, been called into my world of feng shui, I'm like, you're here for a reason, because there's something that needs to be addressed. Your physical environment is not supporting you, and we can turn it around. This is an opportunity. And I always say to them, like, this is great, because now we can fix it. Yeah. If you found me, it's a sign. So that's where I usually go. And I am definitely the eternal optimist. So for me, I'm like, there's a reason this is happening, and let's just work with it and see where it brings us.
Yes, I love that. And I love that. I love the connection between crisis and opportunity, because I think we often get stuck in, and like it's happened to me, is that you can't see when you're in the middle of it. It's like being in the movie. You can't see the opportunity. It's really hard to step out of it. And we are humans. We don't really love change. Change is a challenge, and change is like crisis is often just a change, which is always an opportunity. So it's a great reframe from crisis.
Yeah, for sure. And just as you said that, I remember listening years ago to this Abraham Hicks when I was having this thing with our business, and it wasn't necessarily like as extreme as crisis, but it was a bit of a drama, it was a bit of like, And I remember listening to this, and it's just like, there was a time when you've got what you wanted. You've got what you wanted. And this is what brings you to that space. So for example, there was a time when I had no team, and I wanted help in my business. And then there was something going on with the team. And I'm like, okay, well, actually, I did ask for this. I did ask for this team. So here I am with them. And there's going to be growth with all of the things that we desire. And that's really what this is all about for me.
Yeah. I love that. So I will fully admit that I'm somewhat ignorant of feng shui. I know what it is, obviously. Like I have some awareness of it. I don't know it well. This is your world. But I'm really curious. So for our listeners or viewers who aren't super familiar with feng shui, can you kind of tell us a little bit about it and how it does support this idea of an opportunity and getting through crisis, and like the kind of connection there? Because I think it's really interesting. And our environment is so important to how we show up that I'd love for you to really explicitly draw that connection for people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the things that I love to share, especially for leaders, every Whole Foods is feng shui. So and we're like, oh, okay. And we all know when we go, I don't have Whole Foods here in Greece right now, but when I'm in America, I'm in Whole Foods and I'm like, woohoo, this place is rocking it, And really, when we translate feng shui into English, the translation of the words feng shui, it means good health and good harvest. And harvest is always connected to, what we reap. The seeds that we are sowing, it's our wealth, it's our prosperity. And in Chinese culture, this is a 5,000-year-old practice. And one of the reasons that I love talking to someone like you and leaders that are here listening is because sometimes feng shui has been associated with this kind of little kind of voodoo weird thing with trinkets and little frogs and mirrors and things like that. And for me, it really is acupuncture for your home. So if your body is not feeling very well and you are, not feeling great, you'll go to your doctor, you'll go to your acupuncturist, and acupuncturist will say, okay, well, your energy is off. We need to do this. We need to do this. We jig, and they rejig your energy. They don't give you fashion advice. I'm not an interior designer. What I'm doing is really just working with the energetics of the building. And most buildings now are just, they're not really built with a lot of thought, a lot of bigger, higher level concepts of like when feng shui first originated. It was really building a house or a home in a space that was going to be the most supportive for the people, in terms of the land around it, the water around it. Is this a logical place that I'm not going to get drowned or flooded or something crazy happening to us? Unfortunately, that all kind of has gone out the window, and we'll just put houses and buildings up wherever. And this technique of feng shui is often, like for me, is all about just reading the energy of the building. We all have our own energy for ourselves, and as we're growing as an entrepreneur in business, as a leader in business, there's so much personal development now in the world. Like we're really working on overcoming crises and challenges, overcoming our own limiting beliefs, overcoming our traumas, overcoming and really digging deep into why is this happening and where is it coming from. And I love that. But for me, the missing piece of the jigsaw is this piece of our physical environment, because
Mm.
our physical environment has a very dense energy. And if something is going wrong in a business in China, in Hong Kong, they don't call in like their strategist, their business strategist. They call the feng shui master to be like, what's happening? What's happened? Is a new building built beside me that's infecting the energy here? Is there something going on externally? Is there something going on here? And let's fix it. And that's why I kind of started with every Starbucks or it's not Starbucks, every Whole Foods is feng shui. And other huge companies and corporations are using this practice. They're not just using it and they're not even flying the flag, but they're using it. They're using it because they know it's supporting the flow of more money, more opportunities, more growth, and making the space more harmonious for not just their clients, not just for their banks, but also for their employees and for everyone to have free flow, fluid communication, creativity, money, productivity, all of those things.
I think that's really interesting, and it makes me really curious with the number of people who have ended up working from home, maybe without it being planned in the past
Mm-hmm.
year. How helpful this practice would have been or could still be to them,
Yeah.
because there's a big shift from where they were comfortable, where it was whatever set up, whether it was feng shui or not. There was a separation, a specific energy associated with each place, and now we've kind of, for a lot of people, have blended it together in a way that they're probably not feeling super supported, and it's not feeling great.
It's not feeling great, and it's obviously putting a lot of pressure also on everybody else in the household. And not only that, it's like what I've seen, I've done huge calls. I've had like 600 people from corporations on a call talking about their office, like their workspace. There was like one guy working from a dishwasher, like his dishwasher was the desk. I've had another lady was like wedged into a little desk in her bedroom. And there's just a huge impact because the gap between, for example, I work with people, 90% of my clients who are working on their home, but and even if they have a business outside of there, I might start with your home, and then we'll do the outside space afterwards, because we want to get that balanced first. But what I've seen now is that lots of people would have got out to work and they would have not really had that much time in their house. But now they're spending all of this time together. So you're compounding. If the energy of the house is not supportive for relationships, for money, for this, it's literally compounded because you're spending so much time in that place. I always think of a client who used to say, oh, myself and my husband get on so much better. We're not in the house. we come back and it's like, well, so all of those, yeah, anything that was just not that well, but probably didn't connect back, is you may be sitting going like, wow, okay, actually, like I was I was doing great when I was working away, but now I'm in my house and I'm sitting in my living room working, or I'm living in or working in my on my dining room table. And there's a needs must with this. And for me, I'm happy to talk more about just in terms of the things that you can do to create some boundaries with your workspace, and how I've just been helping actually a lot of clients this year and last year like navigate this, because it's been really tricky for people.
I'd actually love to hear a little bit about some, like, what can people do to create those boundaries, especially, and this is my perception. And look, like, I will fully own that this is my bias in that I work with a lot of leaders, and I spend a lot of my time dealing with and talking to people and organizations where they are dealing with other people, right? So they're leading other people. So there's that additional burden of whatever's happening in the home, in the workspace, in the office, and with the people. So they have this additional energetic burden, if you will, inside of that.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
I'm really curious what people can start to do to establish those boundaries, or support,
Hmm.
the work that they're doing and the energy that they're putting into the different parts of their life and work.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose the first thing is that if, I have this amazing client. Her husband is like a high level executive for this huge international financial firm. I was working with her feng shuiing the house, just doing the review and being like, oh yeah, you've done great, you've done great. And we got to her husband's desk, the office that he'd been working at for the last year. And I said, nobody else. I said, honestly, nobody else has an issue in this whole office, whole house, except the main breadwinner who's up in a bedroom, jammed in a corner. I said, we need to address this now. And she said to me, she said, I've tried to talk to him. I said, we don't know how much longer this is going to go on. How many guests have you had? You need to turn your spare bedroom, get the bed out. We need to make it a centered, focused place for work. She said he had the worst year in his entire working life, and he's like a senior in the company. And I was like, it's because he is sitting in that way. So I'm going to talk about like just that experience. I walked in. First thing I did when I was on Zoom, open up the door, and there is literally he's sitting on a small little crappy wooden chair. And I'm like, if he is in his head office in London, what's he sitting on? And she's like, oh, he has these lovely chairs. And his wife is downstairs on this beautiful Eames like office chair. And she's just like not really working. I was like, give him your chair, like get him in a proper seat. Like, it was also kind of temporary and unknown, but right now it's like, you got to take your space more seriously if you're going to be taken more seriously. That's the first thing. So I was like, get rid of the wooden little crap chair, get a proper table. He was crammed in on this small table. And for anyone who's listening going, I don't have the luxury of this amount of space, I'm going to give you some ideas for this, but I kind of want to talk at like the first high level. Like the best case scenario
Mm-hmm.
is that if you do have a spare room, get the bed out, make some space. If you are a senior leader and you have people, you need some space around you, just like you do in your office that you used to go out to. You need to make your workspace a priority, that when you walk in, you're like, oh my God, I'm so happy to be here. I freaking love this place. I'm so happy. Not like, oh my God, here I am jammed in the corner, like as an afterthought. Like we have to just switch it around. It may not be permanent, but it will change so much, just psychologically.
Yeah.
So the next thing was we negotiated, we figured it out, and we were like, right, we're going to get him into this office where he can sit with the wall behind him and he can see the door. At the time when I first saw the setup, the door opened and it was coming straight at him. So basically all the energy is coming, and kind of coming like sideswipe. So he's not able to see what's coming. And he had no support behind him. He's like this crap little chair, and he's looking out the window on a tight desk. And I was like, we need to flip this around. The CEO of the office, needs to typically get through a secretary, loads of teammates to see it right at the back. Like the CEO is never at the front. So we need to kind of just even energetically create this space. So we got him sitting with a really nice new chair back to the wall so we can see the door. He has space in front of him. So oftentimes if you have, and this is, and I've worked with a lot of women to attract love into their lives, and it's like, that's how I met my husband, punctuating my apartment. So when I see a single or a double bed jammed up against the wall, there's no space, like you're pushing away love. And the same goes for a desk. If it's like jammed up against the wall in a corner, you're feeling cornered in. You can't see what's coming. You're in this space of just like contraction as opposed to expansion. So
Mm.
you want to kind of give your some space. Next goes this desk. It was just full of stuff. And I was like, we just need to take it all off the desk and take the main things that you work, like just the very, very, very main things that you're going to need in here. Let's get that in. Okay. Now, I'm a huge fan of the artwork or what's on your walls. Like everything in your office is impacting your subconscious mind and affecting your energy all day long. So if you're sitting in an office that has your kids' toys, the bed, the suitcases, like, a broken computer, all the old files from your old job, like all of that is like dissipating your energy. You want to create a place that is like focused attention for your work, and then have something that inspires you. So you talked about like everyone in here, a lot of people have a team. So have a picture of your team in the office. Like, here we are, like when we used to have amazing team retreats, like here's our team. Have a picture of your family on your desk. Like, why am I doing this? What's this all about? Like, what is this all about? Maybe, especially if now you're working from home, you can get super creative. You could maybe you have some goals that you are not going to share with people outside, in your typical office. You put your vision board up or get some like goals. This is what my goal is this year. This is what, that you put into your office. So it's your walls, your whole space is like talking to you. I feng shuied this lady's office a couple of years ago, and I just feel like the office, the walls are like one of the things that I have so many examples, like thousands of examples of artwork, like literally mirroring back what's going on in the person's life. But this one woman, when I saw her office, I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to say to her. Like, she had a great desk, the chair, it was just like, looked like the most elegant office ever. And then I'm like, there's something here because she's on with me. So I'm like, tell me about this picture. And it was when we zoomed in, it was like a winter scene. So when we're talking about business, entrepreneurship, life in general, we want flourishing, we want growth. Nobody really wants hibernation or stagnation or introverted time when it comes to like our business and our careers. And so I was like, oh, winter scene. It just felt like a bit harsh. I was like, well, I'm not sure. I think like really we want to change this for like trees or flowers or something that's literally flourishing. So I said to her, okay. And then she goes, and it was, that was my ex-husband's. I'm like, okay, so there's a painting in your office that represents something that didn't work out.
Right.
Like, so we want to just really, really mindfully, like, do analysis of your space. Like what's in your workspace right now? Does it align with where I'm going, with what I'm creating, and who I'm stepping into in my career? So that then changes your eyes of like, oh, that little kitchen table that I'm sitting on, chair I'm sitting on right now, or this desk that I'm sitting at, or that piece of art. I did an interview for Fox I think in Fort Worth a few years ago, and after the show, the women were like, "Oh my God, we love you! Come see our cubicles." So we stood in the two cubicles. I didn't say anything because what I wanted them was to come to their own conclusions, and this is my invitation for everyone listening. So we stood back, and I said, like, I want you to just look at what you have in your cubicles. And one lady had like loads of like gimmicky toys and little just like lots of kind of really weird things like that. I was like, oh, okay. And then the other side, this woman had like her award that she won for presenting. She had this kind of like little accolade thing. She had some diploma in the other space. And the lady with all the kind of childish said, she goes, oh my God, this just looks like I don't take my workspace very serious. I just don't take it very serious. And you could see like they totally, obviously they have different personalities,
Yeah.
but it's like, are you going to take your workspace seriously about where you're doing? And you could see this woman had like all of her career stuff, and it was like, oh yeah, I think I need to get rid of this, all this like gimmicky toys and stuff. She's like, I want to go somewhere in my career. I don't want to be a kid, you know. And it was just this like, what's on your walls, what's in your space, and is it lining you up with where you want to go? And the next one is just like, again, a similar story, but I had a client who was like a Tony Robbins coach, and she had her back to the door. So having your back to the door, it can often again make you just not be able to see what's coming. So you're in this space of just like not being prepared. And this kind of goes back to just that like idea of us being like, you know, fear, like that fight or flight response. We can't see what's coming. We're kind of left in that more a more stressed state than we would be like, oh, there's the door, there's that person coming in. Whereas you're like, I can't see what's coming. So if you are sitting with your back to the door, if someone's going, I can't change, and you can put a small little mirror on your desk, so you can sit there and see what's coming in, and you just go, ah, it settles you down like a tiny bit. And so we flipped her around, and then when she was sitting there, she had all these books, cookery books. She used to be a cordon bleu chef, and I was like, what are all the cookery books doing in here? Like, where's the Tony Robbins books? So she moved like all her Tony Robbins books, all her personal development books in there, and was like, this is your sanctuary for your work. So just like those small things. And for me, it's just really doing this exercise that I love called Fresh Eyes. Like, come into that space that you're working in right now. If it is not, if it's a temporary space, let's just pretend that this is more long term. Like, let's just pretend, because we don't know, and we're all in a bit of limbo. Like, nobody knows. So like, what are the chances of you going back? Then get yourself like a really nice space that you're like, okay, what is going to bring me in here to inspire me, to uplift me, to make me feel good? I know when I always know when I upgrade my office chair or my desk, and I'm always like, oh, I feel like this. And even small little things can make a difference. You know, for example, in my office a few months ago, I was sitting at my desk and I was like, God, we had these like these kind of like polished white concrete floors, which look very, very beautiful. But in the winter in Ireland, the underfloor heating is nice, but it's like, I don't want to swelter in the office. We were talking about the heat earlier on. I was like, I want a rug. And I got like the softest, coziest rug for under my toes. And it just made me feel good. So you want to just like think about these little nuances around your space, and it'll shift you, and your up level your game.
Yeah. So thank you for all that. The one thing that really stands out to me that I think is really important that I want to emphasize is that idea that setting up your space for where you're going, not where you've been. I think a lot of us are so attached to things from the past, and it's like trinkets, right? Like those
Mm-hmm.
little tchotchkes that woman had in her cubicle, whatever it is, that we don't want to lose what that meaning was at some point or who we were or forget, which is great, but it doesn't serve where we're going to have it around us in those ways.
No.
Especially in an office, right? Where it's about work and like presumably success and growth and opportunity.
Yeah. So like, get your diplomas up on the wall. Like, you've done all this study, get the awards up. Get the awards that you want to win up, you know, like, where am I going? What am I creating? What are my goals? You know, who are the people? So even on the bookshelves, like, is there people that you aspire to be like? Bring them into the office, like bring that energy in so it fires you up.
Yeah. I love that. I think it's so it's really funny because it sounds really simple, right? Like you're like, "Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
obviously," but most of us don't do that, right? Like we just we default into the thing that we're comfortable with, or we're like, "Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is just I've always liked whatever this thing is. I'm just going to have it around me because that's what I do."
Exactly. And honestly, don't feel bad. Like, I have seen hundreds and hundreds of offices over the years. And the thing is, it just takes you kind of like changing your perspective. And it's the same with your house. Like, you walk in, you see the stuff, and you just stop seeing it. It's just there. And you're like, okay, how can I just change it up? And just the idea of changing it up and letting go of some of the things out of your office will make a huge difference. Like, the same goes even for your computer. Like, if you go onto your desktop and it's like full of stuff, it's like, oh, like, this is just too overwhelming. Like, give yourself a favor, like make some space on that desktop. Like, on my cheat thing is I select all, put them all into one folder, and then give myself permission to change my screensaver to to this, like, and I currently have a photo that like I always talk about. And then one of my clients sent me a message. She's like, look where I've been. And it's just the most stunning picture of all of these trees, the sun shining through it, and bluebells, you know. And for that, for me, it just feels like so abundant, so rich, so connected to growth. And that's where we want to be, in that energy. And, you know, for that person who might be listening going, I can't move my desk, my back is to the door, I'm like, put your mirror in. I had a desk years ago, oh man, and the office, I still had my interest in feng shui like since I was 15. So I had this office in a basement that we used to call the dungeon. And I was like the main general manager of the business. And my office was the worst office you've ever seen, like seriously. And I one day was like, this is ridiculous. Like everybody else gets the view of the ocean and I'm down in the dungeon. So I went up and took a picture of the view, and I went to the printers and I printed out this beautiful picture. I put a window ledge around it, so I pretended that I was there. Like, so when I sat at my desk, I didn't have this like wall at me. I saw this image that was so expansive. So
Mm.
like we can use art, we can make our space like just, you can use art, we can use a little mirror, we can do little nuanced things to kind of make the space as good as you can, you know. So if you are, and I have like several clients who are working in their bedroom right now, not ideal, you know. Who wants to be sleeping with their work? Like, it's not good for a relationship, it's not good for your, if you are single, you want to call in love. But what can you do? You know, one thing that I love is that I work with a client. She got her new chair, gorgeous new chair. We set her up so she can see the door and her desk. But at nighttime, she got this beautiful box that she just puts everything into, and it goes under the desk. So it's like, I'm off, like just tidy it away. Like just that clear boundary is so important. There's another client who has a computer that she just can't, like, can't dismantle it. So she's got a special shawl that just goes over it.
Hmm.
That's it. Another client who absolutely loves this one, and she's like, it has changed her entire work process, is that I asked her to get an open and closed sign. So she bought an open and closed sign, like, you see in a store, and she hung it on her door of her office. She wanted to call in love into her life, but she was basically married to her business, where her bedroom and her office were side by side. And I was like, look it, the until you close the door on your workspace on a Friday, there is no space. You're working all the time and you're not switching off. And this is where it gets tricky right now, because everyone's working from home. So you think you're like, oh, you're almost like on all the time. So you need to create these just like even visual triggers for open closed. And honestly, she said on a Friday evening, she just turns it and goes, yay. And that's when she made space to meet someone. We worked on the feng shui, we worked on her bedroom. And then once she called in the love, it was like, let's go back to the office so she can put that up for more money. So it's this balance and finding like, what are the little things you can do? So the closed sign, the open closed sign is just so good. And this also can be really good for you, just our own mindset as well, to be like, I'm off now, goodbye. We've taken it to the extreme here in Greece. Like, we've basically rented one house for work and next door for living. So we just, I work in one, I close the door. And we have our work conversations even in here. It's like, if there's a work conversation, I'm like, nope, need to go over there. And they're right beside each other. But it was just this like clear, like, how can you create boundaries? If you're working at the kitchen table, I've had clients, I'm like, still get a different chair, even if it's just a different cushion, something that's like, this is my work thing. And maybe you get like a candle, and I have one client who actually built a screen around her, that like a cardboard screen around her, so that her kids wouldn't disturb her when she had it up. She's like, don't come near me when this comes up, goodbye. And just leave me alone, I'm in work mode. And then at the end of the day, she packs everything away and she puts out lovely different placemats and candles. So it's not like she's sitting at the same place all day
Right.
long. It's different.
Yeah. It's so interesting how the physical separation serves us in so many ways, even if it's mine. It doesn't have to be these. And I appreciate you sharing all this, because
Yeah.
there's um I think there's this idea sometimes that it's all or nothing, right? And you hear feng shui and it's like, oh, well, I have to completely redo everything, and it's going to be, I have a friend who once told me, well, isn't that where they put the stones in different parts of the room? Like, you put rocks in like, that was the perception of it. So it's either like it's all or nothing, or these, but it's really what you're talking about is, it can be very small,
Mm-hmm.
small things that
Yes.
change the perception of the space, that change the boundaries, that give us an expansive view, that remind us that it's more than just this blank wall or this basement or this whatever it is, that actually
Yes.
serves us to be and do our best.
Exactly. And like for me, with feng shui, it is like an iceberg. Like at the top of the iceberg, there is the things that I can share here with you that are on the visible plane. Like, it's like the aesthetics, the clutter, all of those things, like all of that, that's on the visible plane. When I work with clients, we're working at the invisible energy. And there's no structural changes, and this is where there's just so much like miscommunication about feng shui. I consider myself like an energy worker for a house, just like you go for an energy balance for yourself, for your energy, for your acupuncture, for your health. I'm like an energy worker for a house, and there's some houses that are toxic for health,
Yeah.
for money, for relationships, for career. And that's when people come to me, because they're like, I'm doing all the things that my coach is telling me. I'm doing this. I'm working really hard, like, but I'm still not doing this. I have one client who had an amazing business, like an incredible business. And she just signed a $28,000 deal with a new client. A week later, her plumbing in her house exploded. Guess how much the bill was? $28,000. She's like, Patricia, I can't make this stuff up. I can't live like this anymore. There's something going on with my house, because I'm doing the stuff, I'm getting the money in, but it's gone. So that's when I come in and I'm like going to like actually diagnose what's going on and give the cures and balance it. And it can be, it's such a beautiful practice because it impacts everything, not just ourselves, but our children, our families, our husbands, everybody, our wives, partners, everyone benefits. But when we, but this is the part that's like, not necessary. It's just a misunderstood practice. And I love to get people just kind of going, oh, I did this thing, I changed my desk around and it felt so much better. And the whole idea of living in a feng shui house is that things feel better, that you feel better, things go more fluidly, you go into a sense of flow, and your home supports you with that. And that's really where I come in. But at the beginning, there's just like so much that we can just do ourselves with our houses when we just open our eyes and just look for things that are not aligned to where we're going, or even just friction points, like things that just bug you in your house, that like the door doesn't work, or the leaky tap, like these things, they're just depleting not just your energy, but the energy of the house, which is then having a ripple effect on what's happening around your home.
Yeah. So for people who want to learn more about you and what you do, who are intrigued by this idea, where can they find you, Patricia?
Yeah, so you can come to me at patricialohan.com. And I do have a guide for the office that's at patricialohan.com/office. And you can follow me on Instagram. I'm always sharing tips, and I share a weekly YouTube video as well. So they're all at patricialohan.com, and you can check it all out there on my blog. And I would love to hear if you have an aha moment, or you change something around in your office or your desk, or you get I am the boss chair. Like, that's something I just love. I'm like, get an I am the boss chair. And then when you sit in, you're like, I'm boss.
Yes, I love that. And we'll have links to all that in the show notes. But in case someone's listening and driving or something, I always like to have it out loud. Thank you for sharing that with us, and especially the really practical tips, because I think it helps demystify the idea of feng shui and makes it much more practical. And seriously, for anyone who is listening and watching, try these things out and get in touch with Patricia. She's really amazing at what she does.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you again.
You too.
Thanks for joining me today on the Leading Through Crisis podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a minute to rate and review us on your podcast app. If you're interested in learning more about any of our guests, you can find us online at www.leadingthroughcrisis.ca.